And welcome back. Good to see you. It is Boomer here in the Tower Chrysler Studios. Tower Chrysler, number one in your heart. Number one in your scorecard. Number one in your heart. Consumer Choice Awards award-winning dealership. There's so many of them out there. Why go to the others when you can go to the one that everyone thinks is the best? That's what I do. It's Surge, it's Aaron, it's everybody over at Tower Chrysler. Go experience the Tower Chrysler experience for yourself. McLeod Trail South, Southport Road, Willow Park. You know where it is. Today, part 2 of our sit-down. Rhett and I in conversation with Matt Stajan. The Leaf becomes a Flame, moving to Calgary. Brian Burke calls, and that's never a good thing. A early morning phone call from Berkey comes, and it's pack your stuff in a hurry and get to Calgary. And in Toronto, people are very excited about this trade. In Calgary, not so much. Let's get to segment 2 with Matt Stajan right now on Barn Burner.
And we could talk about the trade, but I know we've talked about this in the past, but you kind of felt like your time in Toronto was coming to an end, contract-wise, how the team was, and like you said, you want to win. How far prior to the deal to Calgary did you kind of sense that, because you had contract expiring, that whole thing, when did you start to think that it was over in Toronto?
Well, from the coach, I thought it was going to be over.
Because you went from Quinn to Maurice to Ron Wilson.
Yes. So, and Ron was a hard coach, but he pushed me, but he was giving me lots of opportunity, and we didn't have anybody. So I was playing with Phil Kessel. I was playing a lot of minutes, and I was putting up 50 points for a couple of years. And so, obviously they're going to do that to raise my value too. There's part of that. And so it was in January, probably before the trade happened, even December. I would, you talk to your agent, you're like, what's going on? Do they want to, you just kind of get a feel. And then there was no extension talk, but so it just kind of happened. But talking to Berkey after he said, we were trading you for sure. We would have liked to have kept you at the right, if it worked out, like you were good for our room, and maybe you just slide down to where you should play, like second, third line. And we would love to keep you. But obviously when they could get Dion, who they were targeting at the time, they had to give up some pieces. And I was one of the guys that Calgary wanted. So I totally understand the business of the game, but it's looking back, I'm like, I wish I came to a team that was going to make the playoffs for sure. And then you have the summer, like you see now, you're a rental player. But, I thought at the time that we were a good team here in Calgary and we had the pieces, but things seemed off here when I came here. It was really, I guess they had lost 10 in a row. So something wasn't going right. So it's a kind of a weird situation to come into. But it was also exciting because I had the chance to maybe make the playoffs and play with Jerome and all the names that were here.
So obviously we want Matt's perspective. What do you remember January 31st, 2010? I remember where I was. You get the word that Flames have traded Phaneuf, and then it's, well, where and for what? Did you sense that a Phaneuf deal was coming?
No, I wasn't paying much attention to the game at the time, to be quite honest with you. I was recently retired and more pissed off about hockey than anything. So I remember hearing about it, but I certainly hadn't heard rumblings in the community or amongst friends and ex-teammates that there was a imminent Dion Phaneuf trade about to happen.
Because you knew what Dion was.
It was out of left field.
Yeah, he's a confident kid, and he's, maybe that.
Well, it was also Daryl's.
Yeah, he's your boy,
baby, right? Yeah. He's the only kid that's ever come in under Daryl Sutter and been handed 20-some minutes a night and praised and actually, I remember being in Colorado once, Dion's rookie year, and he's the only guy that plays. It was almost like this is completely opposite of what Daryl's usually preaching.
Yeah. And you knew there would have been some friction. He's a guy that he was conducive to rubbing people the wrong way potentially, but you just thought they'll find a way to work this out. So then blam, he's gone, goes to Toronto, not long before he's wearing the C. They're very excited in Toronto. They're not very excited in Calgary. So almost on two fronts, like, well, guess they're not going to miss me in Toronto, and they aren't super jacked to get me in Calgary. Walk us through, because it was kind of the late night, early morning trade, because I know Calgary played the night before, and then it was kind of a Sunday morning it all came out.
Yeah, both the trade was done Saturday from now what I've heard, but both teams had games. They had to, I guess the trade was, they just had to get through that game. And I just remember we played Vancouver and we lost in overtime, and then we had the day off on the Sunday. So I just remember being at home. My wife was making pancakes. I was sitting on the couch. I don't know what we did the night before. We didn't have kids at the time. So, and then your phone starts buzzing, you get and then I think my mom was texting me like something's going down with your team, and
mom's on it.
Oh yeah. My mom's super diehard. Yeah. She's all about that, but you just hear everything. But then I got a call from Whitey, Ian White, saying, well, my agent also texted me, but they also represent Dion. So something was going down, and then Ian White called me and was like, yeah, I just got traded. Like, he's like, I'm like, where? He's like, I can't, they wouldn't tell me who, and they didn't tell me, they just told me I'm going to Calgary, and they didn't say who I was going with, but they said there's other players. So I was like, okay, it's, I'm not going, like, I haven't got a call. Yeah. So I'm
that
like,
sucks, man.
Yeah,
Good
have fun.
There.
So, and then, but honestly, like, it probably was like 5-10 minutes later. It might have even been when I was on the phone. I think I had a call, a beep, like called waiting, and it was Berkey. It was Leafs GM. He called me first and said the exact same thing. You're traded to Calgary. It's a 7-player deal. You're not going alone. I can't share details who else is going. Just thank you for your services and best of luck. Right.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. It's because everybody just wants to rip the Band-Aid off and move on. So, and that was it. And then I think it was like an hour later, Daryl called me and just, welcome. We're happy to have you. There's a plane coming to get you in 3 hours. Be on it. We play tomorrow night. Like, that was it. So literally we had to figure out, packing from home is fine. You pack whatever you can, but we had to go downtown to the arena to get our stuff because our equipment was all there. And so I remember going to the rink and grabbing the stuff. You say bye to the trainers. And then I remember running into Berkey there just in the parking garage. We just happened to, and he was awesome. He's like, Stage, I didn't want to do this. And it's just part of the game. You'll understand as you get older. I'm like, nope, I get it. So you say bye to everybody and right to the airport. And Ken King was there. He came and picked us up.
I was going to say, because they did send a plane, right?
They sent a plane because we played the next night. So they wanted to get us in right away. So Ken King came in and picked the 4 of us up. We couldn't fit all our stuff on the plane, so our equipment went on. There's 4 of us. There's Jamal.
Nick Hagman,
Jamal and Nick Hagman. And we landed here. It was dark when we landed here. And I remember we had to get our physicals. So right away we were at the hotel and we were staying at the International. They put us at the International back then. Man, was it dry in that place. But we did our physicals that night, and Daryl was talking to us, and then I'm like, Matt, you're playing tomorrow. And we hadn't met anybody yet. Like, I had a phone call from Jerome, and that's pretty much it. Until you get to know everybody. So next morning you have morning skate, and then you play. We played Philadelphia the next night. So it was a whirlwind experience, and it was just kind of weird because you don't get to say bye to anybody. Like, that was my hometown. Like, that was home for me. And I'm like, hey, this is
hours.
It was literally hours gone, and I couldn't imagine having kids at the time if that happens. Like that.
You did have a wife, though.
I did have a wife, and she was working, and she was a teacher. So it was a little bit of that. So yeah, it just, I came, and there was an all-star break coming up a week later. So we did get to kind of reset. But our all-star break was supposed to be in Bahamas. So it was like a long flight from here. but that's
a hard goodbye. Everything's in your head.
Yes.
But honey, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Bye.
See ya.
And you leave her all alone, and you're off.
And we had
fans don't think of that.
No,
necessarily.
and we had just moved into the house we built in Toronto. We were in it for maybe 2 months.
Kiss of death, buddy.
Yeah, no, I know. And then we were gone. It's crazy. And then you're staying here and it was a weird dressing room dynamic when I came to Calgary. Like for a team that I was like, it's been on the cusp. It was just a weird dynamic in the room. Like I guess the team had lost 10 in a row, and they made changes they want, and that wasn't the only trade they made. They brought in, who was it, Kodalik and Higgins as well for, I don't even know who
it was. Jokinen and Prost from
that's right.
New York.
So like it was weird. So we played that morning. Ole was still here. It was a Monday morning.
Because that was weird too.
That was really weird. So we're having more on skate. Ole's on the ice. And then after that, there's like rumblings in the dressing room. We're the new guys. And it's like, yeah, Ole's traded this and that. And then we have a game that night. So it was like,
yes,
it was just a weird vibe, weird situation. But then after the All-Star break, you get settled in, and it was good. Actually, it was Olympic break that year. So it was actually a longer break. So it wasn't bad, but we had lost Damon Lankow, who was second line or the first line center. I would say he was the first line center, and I was second, and then you had Connie. So you have these guys injured. You trade Ole, and then Lankow goes down. So we had an uphill battle when you really look at it. But Hagman and Whitey were so good in Toronto. Like they were like quality players, and we all struggled. And Jammer too. But Jammer played well I remember him coming in. He played well. Him and Nystrom went on that run at the end of the season. But Hagman and Whitey, we just couldn't find our footing.
It's a different role for Jamal Mayers than it is for you guys. Because you guys, you're going to bring the offense. You're skill guys.
True.
Mayers is a character guy, playing the fourth row crash bank. Yeah. Easier to play your game. Yeah. And the measuring stick's a little easier, I think, for him.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Looking even later in my career when I was a fourth line guy, like you just make sure you do your job, and you're not relied on to score. But yeah, we just I didn't even think I played terribly down the stretch, but I wasn't like, the next year was the really tough year for me.
Yeah.
But we just didn't make it. And then, but Hagman was so good in Toronto when he came here, and I talked to him about he just couldn't find a role on the team. Like he was a good player. He was putting up 30 goals. I know he's getting more opportunity there, but he was still getting opportunity here. So it was just weird. Like, I think everybody looks at it one for one, me for Dion, but like there's other pieces that were solid NHLers that it just didn't work out. So that's what happened. It just kind of went that way. So unfortunately it was a tough start, but I think anybody gets traded mid-season and gets thrown in like that. And I was excited to play with Iggy, and I'm a passer, and he's a shooter, but we had some success at times, but it wasn't like what everybody thought. And I wasn't a legitimate number one center. Like, that's the honest truth. I was always a 2-3 guy, more of a penalty killer. Even in Toronto, that was my role. I never was a offensive guy, but all that pressure came on to me because I re-signed here, and people thought that's what I should have been.
And that was near the end for Daryl too. That's why all of that it felt like Daryl had gotten a little bit desperate and was trying to make some deals, and Brent was the coach, and we'll talk about Brent. And I don't know that he and Brent were.
Yeah, it was weird.
In a great spot.
The whole thing was weird. I was far away from it. I was done, but I knew, just talking with guys, that it wasn't a cohesive unit from top down.
And you saw it immediately.
It was, like it was like within a road trip, like you go on the road, you see kind of where everybody's hanging out, and you're getting pulled in different directions. Me and Gio are best of friends, but like I knew him a little bit, so he's kind of the guy you hang out with, but then you hear different sides of, and you just feel that in the room. It was weird, and I know I've said that a lot, but it was
individually everyone good guys, but it was a weird dynamic in the
exactly. And I loved we had fun. Like Kipper was awesome, and Noodles was the goalie coach. Like we had such a good group. It just never meshed because there was difference of opinion on a lot of things, including the style of play.
Every day on Barn Burner, the Pinder Report is brought to you by Village Honda. Village Honda has new Hondas arriving daily and has a huge pre-owned inventory with over 70 used vehicles on site and access to over 400 more in their dealer group. All makes, all models, all budgets. It's award-winning service, a top-rated team. Village Honda is your dealership for life, located in the Northwest Auto Mall and online at villagehonda.com.
The Hearing Loss Clinic was opened in 1993 with a simple mission: make a positive difference in the lives of our clients. It's never been about hearing loss or hearing impairment. It's been about empowering you to be socially active or more connected with loved ones and confident in every aspect of your life. Men and women of all ages, and of course, children can suffer from hearing loss too. There can be serious health risks that are linked to untreated hearing loss, and you can get a peace of mind at 4 Calgary locations: Shaughnessy, University District, Northwest in the Crowfoot Business Center, and in the North Hill professional offices. If you've got issues with your hearing, come visit one of their 4 Calgary locations for an evaluation. They're the 2022 Chamber of Commerce Professional Services Excellence Award winner. Visit one of their 3 locations in BC. You can find them in Cranbrook, Creston, Fernie, Golden, and Invermere. Famous people that have swung by the Hearing Loss Clinic: John Huffnagel, Lanny McDonald, Haley Wickenheiser, Peter Marr. It's worked for them and it can work for you. Check out their social streams on Twitter at The Hearing Loss or on Instagram at The Hearing Loss Clinic.
So you come in your first full year. So you get the trade in January, you come back that fall, and okay, we start fresh, clean slate.
Yep.
But you and Brent, did you clash? Did he?
I think when I first got there, I played with Iggy a bit, but Lancal was too. So I was kind of in a good role. Lancal got hurt, and then I forced in, and we'd missed the playoffs. And then the next season I was slotted to play on the second line, I think with Borky and Hagman, like be a good second, third, wherever we were slotted, because they brought Ole back to play with Iggy. So yeah, which was also weird. But anyways, I got hurt the first preseason game that year. I separated my shoulder in Vancouver. So I missed all of training camp after that. So I missed the first 3 games of the year. I think the first game we got blown out in Edmonton, the old Everly goal. It was a tough start. And then I came back 4th game, and I was playing with Tanguay and Iggy, and we played good. I looked back recently at like, how did my game logs back then? And I was like, oh, I wasn't terrible for the first month and a half. Like, it wasn't bad. And then I looked, and as soon as my ice time dropped, so I obviously had lost Brent's trust in that time. And then all of a sudden I found myself on the 4th line, and it was just, and that's where I was. So I don't really know why that was. I thought I would at least be on the 3rd line and play a little bit more, or penalty kill. Like, he wasn't even using me as a penalty killer when I first got here. Like, there was this notion that I needed to put up points, and I was like, I've always penalty killed. That was my thing. And then it just took a while. And by the end of Brent's tenure, it actually came full circle, and he was playing me more again. But then he was gone. Then Bob came in, and Bob used me in a role. He's like, you're not playing any power play. I said, okay, I don't think that's my role anyways. And he used me on the penalty kill and as a checking center to play against the other team's top line. He said, that's your job. And that's all he said to me. And from there, I had 2 really good seasons and kind of niched out another 5 years of my career from that.
It's funny. It seems like such a simple thing, but I wonder if that's so often what players don't get. You're, like you say, am I supposed to get points, or am I a penalty killer? Am I a checker?
It's 2 things as well, though, because Stage is accepting of what he's told by the coach, right? Whereas if he's like, the hell with that, I am a point producer. You can't put me, that's where the disconnect happens. And that's where some guys fail in their careers. Yeah. Like, sometimes you have to accept a role that, and not that you're saying that you deserved more or even wanted more, but you do accept a role and you play it to the best of your ability. Whereas other guys will go, the coach is an idiot. I should be doing more.
And you always want to play more, and you always want to play on the power play. Like, that's just,
I didn't like the power play.
See, accepting of your role. Yeah.
But you have, like Rhett said, you have to adapt. You don't survive in the league a long time if you can't adapt. Like, obviously you're going to have your stars that are going to always be the stars on the team, but everybody else, like, you have to adapt, or you become a bad teammate, and the guy who's always bitching, and like, team's going to find someone else. Yeah. It's pretty simple. So
find a role and do it well.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I'm kind of jumping all over a little bit. So you come after the trade, you end that season. The next year, obviously Katie's here now, and looking back, I was maybe a little surprised because you signed the extension 4 years, and it still felt like, I'm not sure where this team is at or if this team is cohesive. It just still didn't feel. So it was like, this is Stajan saying, I'm in. I'm in for the city. I'm in for the team. I'm staying long term. When you were close to free agency, what was your decision-making process? Because that's everybody. Let's get to UFA status.
Yeah, and I remember talking. Well, Calgary offered me the deal 4 years. It was during the Olympic break, and I remember being like, "Okay, like, how do you turn that down?" Like, I was a guy making 1.5, 800, and then 1.5. So talking to my agent, it was like, I was like, okay, so if we went to free agency and the salary cap where it was then, I'm like, what would I get? And he'd be like, he said, it's very similar. Like Matthew Lombardi, who also played here, we were always comparables. He was a free agent that summer. He got the exact same deal I got, but in Nashville. So it was just kind of, honestly, like looking at the situation, I still feeling it out. It seemed like a mess, but I'm like, you got Kipper, you got Jerome, you got Gio's coming on, you got Reggie. Like, we still had really good players. I'm like, okay, it's not a bad spot. And we were enjoying our first, few months in the city. And then there was also a little bit, and this is just, it's just me as a person feeling like, no, we owe the Calgary Flames. They wanted me. They traded a big piece. Like, we owe this franchise, to be here and play it out. And that was a big part of it. Like, if we just walked there, it would have looked like I would have been hated in Calgary, right? And maybe not, because how the first few years went, but you know what I mean? At the time, I was like, we owe it. This team traded for me and the other players. Like, let's see how it goes. And that's kind of, that was the decisioning process. And how do you turn that down when it's your first big deal? I could have waited till July 1st, I guess, looking back, but we were in a playoff race at the time too. So you have the GM Daryl offering you this, you got to make a decision, because if you say no there, then who knows how the rest of that season goes.
How hard was it? Because again, being honest, like you were saying, it was a rough start. You went from being, 15, 16 double-digit goals, and then that was gone. Your role with Brent is fourth line, third, maybe, that sort of thing. And I think from a fan's perspective, it was like, this is not what we thought we were getting in return for Dion Phaneuf, because of course now, as we know, in Toronto, you're on that pedestal, and Ron Wilson loves him and Berkey loves him. And it wasn't going well for Hagman or for you guys. How did you deal with that? Because it's not Toronto, and the media is a little different, and the fans, you can still probably go to the grocery store and the movies, but how disappointed were you in the production, and were you feeling that pressure that maybe this was now a bad trade for the Flames?
Definitely. Like, I probably took it out at home a lot. I definitely did. Like, I remember going out, like, you still go with your teammates, don't really, even if they think it, you're still friends, like you're going out having a good time. But I remember being out in Calgary, just around the city, and fans coming up and just giving it to me. Like, and I would be like, what can you do? I you just can't get in trouble. And I remember, like, my wife would like yell back at people. I'm like, can we please not do that? Like, we don't need to. But it got to a point where, like, I'm like, let's just not go out at times. But that's what you signed up for, and it wasn't going well. Like, it got to a point, and David Moss, I love David Moss. He's a winger, but Brent had him playing third line center over me on the fourth line. Like, it got to a point where I lost total trust. And speaking of Brent, and I have a good relationship with Brent when I see him now, and like, he's a good guy. But he basically said, I had to break you down and build you back up. That was his logic. He thought I needed something, and in his opinion, maybe did. In my opinion, maybe could have went about it a different way, because I was always.
Did you start to question yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was in my own head too. Because then you start worrying about, okay, I got to produce, I got to do this, I got to, and then
and then every little mistake is
magnified.
Now,
and
did
then-
Brent give you that, like Hartley did? Here's your role. If you do these things, you're working within the program.
No,
Or is there confusion?
It was confusion. Like played certain way, but then you're put out only against the fourth line. You just know the coach isn't trusting. Where Bob was like, you're playing against this, who you're playing against every night, and so then you're like, you feel a part of it, like you feel like you're an important piece. Where at the time I was kind of like, they're just trying to give me minutes, and they were protecting me. Ultimately, the ice time I was getting was like they're playing me in roles where I'm protected. Where Bob was like, no, and it just kind of, that's kind of how it switched. But by the end of Brent's tenure, Brent was playing me the last few months. I was back playing with Iggy and Tangs for the last few months. So we had a good stretch there to the end of that year. So I think by that point he had trusted me, but the year and a half to that point, it was a tough time. Like we traded Reggie, it was a crazy time here. And then as a player, you're like, this kind of, you feel a lot of at fault because the trade, and then Whitey's been traded now and Hagman's been put on waivers, or like
those were goofy years.
It was,
again, every year you felt like this team should be really good. And then it would be a struggle and a fight. And it just seemed like, they just seemed the organization seemed to be in 7 different pieces, and it didn't know where the hell it was going.
I was sitting in the media room. This was during Brent's first year, and I worked in Red Deer for a number of years with Brent, so I knew him. And it was after a game, another loss, and Brent does the post-game coaches thing, and on his way out, he taps me on the shoulder and gives me the kind of thing. So we go into the alumni dressing room, wherever it is, and he was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what have I got here? What have I gotten myself into? And I said, well, I don't know. And he just kind of like J-Bo doesn't say a word. And like, he's just like, not to pick on J-Bo. It's just, but he's like, we got this. And that's just, who's the leader? What is going on here? And there was no answer. It was like, it's the collection of players that are here right now.
And a lot of those players were there through that whole time. And it's just like Kipper hit a lot of stuff on the outside.
Sure he did.
100%. Like, because he was always just steady Eddie. But there was just the problem was the divide was the defense and the offense. It was like certain players up front, and then certain players like we got to commit to defense and then play from there. And the other side was like, no, we need to score goals. We have Kipper
still playing.
Yeah.
Right.
We didn't have, yes.
You would have been right through it.
At the end of it, but at the start we were winning.
Yes.
That makes a big difference.
I came in basically a year and a bit after you were done. Yeah. So I'm still catching how it was at the end of your tenure. Yeah. That's kind of how it was until they started trading everybody.
Yeah.
Because I had the conversation with Mike Keenan. He'd run me into the rafters and was done. But halfway through the year that I was my last year under contract, I hated it. I was in the dressing room and I was grabbing they had the day off or something. And I'm in there going to do a workout, and he comes in to get a coffee, and I'm like, oh God, great. And he actually goes, what's with this team? I said, well, do you want me to tell you the truth? Like, you're actually talking? Like, is this something? And it was the same sort of questions. Like, what's with these guys? Why is there guys going this way and that way and this way and that way? And from afar and from a fan's perspective, you've got a group of guys. I mean, you had a great decor. You had an amazing goaltender. You had one of the top forwards and even maybe lines in the league. Like, there was no reason for the team to struggle so mightily in those years. Yeah. But shit happens. So they're not the only team in the world to ever.
And you look back now and you still can't figure it out.
No, because you go through the lineups, you're like, this should be.
Yeah.
But it's
because there's dysfunction. It's not like the only team that is free of dysfunction is the team that wins, or that all teams that are making the playoffs, everything's, hunky-dory. It was. So then Daryl leaves and Jay comes in, and then Brent leaves. and Bob Hartley comes in because Feaster, because I remember there too, you knew it was happening because Feaster and Bob.
How the hell did Feaster get here?
Feaster he would be in contact.
That was the one to me. I was like, what is this guy doing here? Right? Like, not because I don't know him from a hole in the ground, but I'm like, I thought Darryl was the GM. And now Feaster's working under him. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem, who decided on that? Right? Like, it was weird.
It's time to discover or rediscover the legendary St. Eugene Golf Resort and Casino. Planning a golf trip, a romantic getaway, or maybe just some tranquility away from the city, St. Eugene is the answer. Hotel, championship golf course, casino, spa, restaurants, all of it nestled in the spectacular Rocky Mountains and just minutes outside of Cranbrook, BC. Visit their website, steugene.ca, and experience the history and heritage of the St. Eugene Golf Resort and Casino.
The original Bon Ton Meat Market opened its doors way back in 1921, and all they've done since then is provide the highest quality product and treat customers like family. The very best AAA Alberta beef, free-range poultry, grain-fed Alberta lamb, milk-fed veal, and fresh Alberta pork. Once again, Bon Ton was voted the Calgary Consumer Choice Award winner for Best Deli Meat Market. Find them at 28 Crowfoot Circle Northwest, or go to bontonmeatmarket.com.
So, I mean, you look at it, so obviously Darryl was going to be gone.
Yeah, but Darryl wouldn't have. Anyway,
I know, but Jay Feaster, he's an out-of-work GM that has a Stanley Cup ring. Yeah, I don't think it was anything more than that.
Yeah, and they beat the Flames in that Stanley Cup.
And I had heard that Brent was still coaching the team, and Jay would be on the phone to Bob asking him what
thoughts were.
Like, Jesus, like, no shit, things aren't going well. So then Bob comes in, and we've talked to, I just find it funny, like, you might be one of the few guys, and maybe oddly Backlund was kind of unlocked by Bob Hartley. Not a lot of guys love Bob Hartley.
Oh, I don't love him either like, by the end, but at the time, like, Bob came in. So once Iggy was gone, it was, so you had our younger team, and it was kind of everybody was kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
And Bob was really good at details. So we played a young team, like, you got to do the details. You don't have, everybody was on the same page, very simple system. Like, our breakout was basically go back and de-rim the puck. Like, that was honestly and it honestly worked for a bit, because the way we were good off the rush. We had Johnny coming in and they're good off the rush. They're not guys who go in and cycle the puck for 30 seconds and create chances. They're off the rush. So it worked. And then where Bob went sideways is his thing was he would get 4 or 5 guys, or he would go to the top guys and play the crap out of them and get them on his side, and then start treating the rest of the team like they don't matter.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't do that, because then what that does is it causes a divide in the room. I remember being in the dressing room and we hashed it out one day, and like, as players, the room was divided, and he had said something in a meeting, in a video, and he attacked like 6 or 7 of the bottom 6 guys, bottom D. And we came in, and I was like, that can't happen. Like, our team's divided. He can't treat this half of the room one way and the other half the other way. And
you said this to Bob, or
no, within the
team?
dressing room.
Yeah.
Oh, I said it to Bob too, but Bob didn't listen to players.
Yeah.
So we hashed it out, and then everybody started realizing what he was doing. And this was right after we had success the year before too. We made the playoffs, and we were kind of a good group. And then once you can start seeing a little divide, and then we had that meeting, be like, no, like, he's the coach. We can all hate the coach. We all got to stay together. Once we had that little hash out in our dressing room, it was like, okay, then all the guys who he's treating well started seeing the way he was treating everybody else. And then you really start to see, okay, this guy's a dick.
Do you think like, that was by design? Because sometimes they'll say, well, that's the coach's plan. It's a galvanizing thing for the room when they can come together and hate the coach. I feel like that gives a shitty coach too much credit sometimes.
No, hey, you can't
not a shitty coach, but an asshole.
You can't take away what Bob did. Like, he like made us believe, and we had some good seasons. But then after a few years, you start seeing through that, and then it goes sideways. And then I don't know, let's put it this way. Bob was a lot different in the media than he was in the dressing room.
Yeah.
So it was his time to go when he left. But when he came in, like, he was hard work, put your work pants on, details. It was what we needed. Like, honestly, it's what we needed as a team. It was like, no bullshit.
Well, and you give everyone a role too. Like
he gave roles.
That's
huge.
Everyone
too.
on the not everyone, because like I said 3 minutes ago, you'll get guys that butt up against that and go, well, I want to be a goal scorer. But most guys, you give them a role and set them up for success. Thank you very much. That's all I need, coach. That clarity is great. And
he did that. And he was very, like, before every game, it would be like, this line, if home game would be like, this line you're playing against, this line or this line. Like, there was the game planning he was really good at that. But it just, the way you treat people sometimes catches up. And even backs, I remember backs kind of came to light under Bob too. Yeah. But like, there was times where backs would stand up for himself, and, you know, it would take him a while. But like, the thing is, when you challenge Bob, it wasn't like some coaches want you to challenge him. Once you challenge Bob, you're like, you're not ever going to win him back. And that's kind of what happened with a few of us. And by the end, it was just like, okay. Like,
well, that's why it ends for a coach, because now you've got no one where you turn into.
You got to trust. You can push your players as hard as you want, but you got to have their respect, right? That's just. So.
And you wonder if it wasn't for Jay Feaster, if Bob would have even coached again after Colorado, because he came here and it was more of the same. The stories were just
Atlanta. He was terrible to people.
Yeah.
Awful to people. It's too bad. You know?
Yeah, because he was good at certain things.
Yeah.
Like,
so, and it, like, I'm just wondering again. Here's this dysfunctional room, and then Iggy, Jay Bouwmeester, Kiprasov. You take these guys out. What's that next year like?
We just all felt like what we had. The next year was kind of the tough year, right? It was the end of the lockout year. We played half season, but then was it the next year we made the playoffs, or 2 years after? It was 2 years after, because we had the half season, and then we had one season, Monahan's rookie year, and then the next season we made the playoffs.
Yeah, Monahan's 18, Berchi's 20. Those guys are gone.
Yeah. It was very. It was like, okay, guys got to step up now. That's what it was like. Okay, the Hall of Famers that are on our team are not here anymore, and guys got to step up, and we do it by committee. That's the conversations we had. You know, and Gio was the perfect captain. He's a soldier, but Gio needs people around him, because Gio's so focused on what he's doing. And so there's a group of us older guys. Camilleri was still here, Glenn Cross, Lee Stempniak. Yeah. Like, none of us were like, Cammy's probably the biggest name at the time before Gio really took off. But it was just kind of a collection of older guys, and we're going to work hard, and it just kind of worked. And then you make a few adjustments before you know it, we're surprising the league. And that's kind of how it happened. But it was just a different mindset, I think, when those guys left, because there was so much talk still about 04. Honestly, like, when they made the cup final, and until Jerome and Kipper and everybody was gone, it was kind of, okay, like, now the team's going in a different direction. And that's kind of.
Well, they tried to slap that 04 team onto every season moving forward.
Exactly.
And it was like, guys, and Daryl left it up the year after. We had the lockout year, and Daryl be a GM coach. He wanted to get older when the whole league was, no, let's get younger. Like, and so from that point on, it was kind of like the Leafs when you started with Toronto. It was like you had old guys that were going to be gone in a year or two, and never built from the ground up. And if they'd have done that, they'd have been way better off, because you had Kipper and Iggy and that. Dion even came in. But if you'd have done more of that, instead of trying to, we're one piece away. They were one piece away for a decade.
Yeah.
Almost. right?
One,
Like it felt like, oh, if we can just get this, whoa, we're one piece. You weren't one piece away. You were a dysfunctional squad for 6 years, and now you look back at the lineups and you go, yeah, there was some weird teams, and you said it, and everyone knows it. Kipper hit everything.
It's Kipper's fault.
It's Kipper's fault.
Yeah, there you go. Well, just look at the like what high end first round forward was brought in from that time. I can tell you got like Backlund, but he was more. Backlund's not high. Like he's more
Backlund
like
was not a high end.
No,
it was
through
no.
that,
It
like,
was.
But until you got Johnny and Monahan, like there was no high end.
No.
talent.
Adrian Acoin came in before you were there,
Yeah.
and he said, he goes, "This is the first training camp in my career. I've been unimpressed, or I've not been wowed by at least one prospect."
Player, yeah.
He goes,
Yeah.
like, I remember the conversation. He was like, "There is not one kid in this training camp that has a chance or should have a chance to make the NHL." He's like, usually you go to training camp, you're like, oh, this kid,
Yeah.
there's somebody that
Yeah.
stands out. That happened for like numerous years.
Yeah.
And that was how they drafted, right? It was you didn't want European. If they were too small, or if they were skilled, well, where's it from? Like Czechoslovakia? No, no
Western
chance.
Canada.
Like none of those guys were getting drafted. It was tough, rugged.
Well, and
big.
again, they were a lot of times in the draft position where the Leafs were, where you weren't drafting high top 10 pick, right? You were kind of bottom half of the league draft picks in the first round, so you weren't getting the best of the best to begin with. But they also had a philosophy that, but again, it went back to we're a piece away.
Yeah,
we just need one more piece of grit to get us. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
it's a fast league now. You need to revamp everything.
But there was a stretch there where you had Owen Nolan come in for a couple of years. Bertuzzi came, like
Tony Amonte came.
Yeah, it was like year after year. But you got to hit on, even if they're late first, you got to hope that one or two in a decade.
Wow, and
come on.
Yeah, but again, that goes back to the philosophy of the kids that they were drafting. They were not trying to take. I mean, the highest skilled guy I think they took a swing at was the guy that played with Taylor Hall.
Yeah, Greg Nemus.
Yeah, and what did he play? A couple games?
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, he was good because in junior he could give the
played
puck
with the
to
best
Taylor Hall
player in the friggin' draft.
Yeah.
So you make the playoffs. You talk about 04 and how it's kind of hanging over your head. So those guys all leave, and it's kind of like finally kind of a fresh start almost in a way. And then you get to the playoffs, and it's Vancouver. Do you remember what were your expectation levels? It's great to make the playoffs. You don't want to you want to do more than that. What were you thinking about that team specifically as you're getting ready for Vancouver in round one?
Oh, I thought we lucked out with the matchup. Definitely. We thought we could beat them. But we were playing like when Gio got hurt for the rest of the season around the trade deadline. So the last 20 games, we were playing basically do or die games. That's what we thought. So we were playing hard hockey. And I remember we were in Nashville, and Berkey, because Berkey was the GM at the time. And we had a meeting in Nashville. They brought in Nashville sandwiches and Nashville meat. Like it was awesome. Like after, and Berkey said, I'm having a meeting with the guys. So Berkey came in, and Bob was there, and all our coaches, and he wrote on the board, I think we had 10, at that time we had 10 games left or something, or 8 games left. And he wrote on the board, 8 effing hours. That's what he wrote on the board. And we were like, what's this mean? Right. He left him there for a bit. And then he came in and he said a speech. He's like, that's all we have to work and be the best for the rest of the season. And then every game, then the next game would be 7. And this would be on our board until the end of the season. Until we got in. And that it just kind of, we had a goal, like Gio was hurt, we were playing for him, and then it just kind of brought us together. And it was, the guys laugh about it, but also it was like our mindset was like, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we would win games, and before you know it, we're playing LA at home with 2 games left, and if we win, we're in the playoffs. And I remember that game, like we played so well, and we were playing
awesome that game.
Yeah, and we were playing so structured. Like I know people want to see free flowing, but at that point, and you watch the playoffs, you got to be structured. Like we were having, like Johnny wasn't turning pucks over like he maybe had been in his at points. We want him to be dynamic, but he was like buying in, like we're getting pucks in deep, and it just kind of worked. And then we make the playoffs, and we're playing Vancouver, and game one I was so excited because it'd been so long since I even played a playoff game. And I just remember the juices, and we just felt like we had this. And the thought was the whole time was win one road game, and then we were a good home team that year, and we were in that playoffs too, and we won that first game. We won late, and Ferland did his thing, and then at game two, we had that brawl at the end of the game where England and I fought two guys, and I was getting pinned under the net there.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
He didn't have his fighter strap on, so his jersey came. I couldn't grab anything. That's my excuse. But that actually, like, so we lost game two, but that end of the game, that was so big for us because we were so fired up about everything that had happened there and all that. We came home and we cooked at home. Like those two games, we ran them out of the rink. And I remember with game 5 in Vancouver, I remember being so pissed that we didn't win that game because Hiller stood on his head that game and we lost by a goal and we didn't play well. And I remember being like, after the game, like we were like that, this can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came home, we were down 3-0 game 6. We're like, but we got a late goal in the first, and then it was just kind of, we took care of business. It was meant to be, like, you want to say that, but like we just had the right mindset, nothing to lose. It always is easier not being the favorite. Like, let's be honest, you're out there, but we just stayed in control we, as a team, we just believed.
Outdoor Dental. Dentistry with no needles, no drills, and no stress. Dr. Jay Patel decided a few years ago that it was time to change the dental experience for his patients. Introducing the Solea Laser. This laser treatment is pain-free, will leave you feeling relaxed and comfortable. In addition, the laser is used to treat sleep apnea by increasing the tension of the soft palate to reduce snoring. In just 2 15-minute treatments, you could be getting the amount and quality of sleep that you've been missing out on. Visit their website for more information and to book a consultation, outdoor.dental. That website again, outdoor.dental. The word is out. Mad Rose Pub in Royal Oak has become one of Calgary's best pubs, and it's no secret why. 20 beers on tap, kid-friendly Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, daily specials, lunch specials, some of the best food you're going to find in the city, period. Burgers, pastas, steaks, full entrees, and proud to serve one of the best and most talked about pizzas in Calgary. Summer's here. Come enjoy the brand new patio. Check out their website. Maybe order some takeout. Madrose.pub is the website. 15 Royal Vista Place is the address. It's Mad Rose Pub.
I was at that game, and I just remember thinking as I'm sitting there, it's like, I can't believe this is the game that I came to. This is 3-0. You fucking guys, like, I don't get to many. Come on now. And then it turned, and it was inevitable. You overwhelmed them, and I've asked you this before. And I guess it's got to be the biggest goal you've ever scored. Tell me about that third period. The clock's winding down, less than 5 to go, and there it is.
Yeah, I just remember, like, before that game, it was game 6 Saturday night, and it was like an 8 or 8:30. It was a late start. And coming in, like, when you're warming up playing soccer, the crowd, it was buzzing in the dome. And I'm sure Rhett in 2004 was the same. And yeah, we go out. We actually came out strong, but then they scored. They got a power play goal, whatever. We're down 3-0. But late in that game, so our job, I had Ferland on my line and David Jones. We were just playing as Sedins. We're like, our job, shut down the Sedins. And Ferland can run around and do his thing, and we'll just kind of be the safety guys to cover up for him because he would run out of position. And that's all that was. We went out for a shift and they forced the pass up the middle and we turned it over, went down a rush. Ferland went into the net like he did, like careless, and took someone with them and almost dragged 2 guys. Jones went to the net after he shot it. And 2 guys over back checked before, I'm in the slot with the puck on my stick. It was rolling a bit, bouncing a bit, but I remember just taking a second and you're just so focused on what you're doing that like you can't take in the crowd. But yeah, I was lucky enough to put that one in, and then back to refocusing, making sure that we get through the period, because they did have one more chance late in that game. But it's looking back now when I watch it, it was really loud. But at the time, you're just kind of like so focused on just what you need to do to help your team.
It was really loud, and much like you and how excited you were to get back to the playoffs, so too were the fans. They just 0-4. It was just such a thing, and to see the dome red and full and loud, and that was an amazing moment. And there's some stuff online. Because you're wearing a mic somehow for that game, and I love how it's just joy to the point where you're making noises, but you're not saying words. You're just kind of like, it's just yelling. You're just so excited.
I think they edited that.
They might have, yeah.
But
it was to win. It was to win at home, and it was to beat them.
Yeah,
it was everything.
Yeah, and they were the team that for 5 years, like they were the team in our division that everybody hated. Like they made the cup in 2010.
They were good, and they had
exactly
a bunch of pricks on the team that would drive you nuts.
And that was almost the end of that era for them too. Like after that, they all just dismantled that team. So it was awesome. Like, and it was just such a good experience. The city was awesome, and like it was just, for me, it was just so many hard times from when I came to Calgary, and then to kind of build my way back up. Feeling good about my game, and then to get to that point, like I was just so thankful, and it was just unbelievable. Honestly, I was just so we were just excited to go to the next round, and hopefully we can do the same. And we had that exciting game 3 at home, but Anaheim was just a really good team.
Yeah. And they also had some pricks, as I recall. We
don't
need to talk about
that. Well, that's the other thing. When I got traded to Calgary, it was like I went from playing in the East, and I don't know if it's as much of a thing now, but the West was way tougher to play, way tougher. And then you look at our division, you had Thornton in San Jose, you have Kopitar in LA, you got Getzlaff in Anaheim. Like that's our division we'd have to go through, and we don't have a centerman when I got so I'm playing against these guys all of a sudden all the time, where in Toronto you're not playing those guys. Like those guys are hard to play against, let alone the rest of the team. So
then the next year, Sam Bennett is here, and I mean, you can't be, because I think there you were 32 years of age. You got lots of career left. You got time in your contract. What do you remember about coming in? Because there's some expectation for the team. Obviously, you're now a playoff team, and there's some good young players coming in. How long? I mean, for you personally, was that where it started to kind of, just in terms of playing time? Because there was some pressure to certainly play Sam and to play the kids. Did it change that quickly?
It did. Like I remember going into like players talk, and I remember at the end of the year, you go to your team parties and stuff, and who's Wides, he likes to stir the pot. But he came to me at the year-end party, and he's like, Stage, he's like, I was like, how was your end of the year meeting? He just, you know, because it's with Bob, so we're always laughing at some of the stuff he would say. And he goes, Bob actually brought you up in my meeting. I said, why? Like, why would I come up? Like, and he's like, he told me, he said, Stage is going to be the 4th line center next year. Like, basically said that's going to be his job. That's his role. Because he was trying to put a message to Wise that you're going to play a lesser role. But at that point, I just had a really good playoff, scored, and then I hear that, and I come into the season the next year, and all of a sudden I'm playing. And no offense to guys, but my wingers are Bolig, and you know, it would have been nice. Like, why aren't we battling for ice time? Like, you're just placing me, and I get you fill a role, and eventually I just whatever, that's my role. But it was kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and then other guys were that was kind of, and then you brought in Dougie Hamilton. So other guys' roles changed, and then there's a different dynamic on the team, and we hit a rough patch, and before you know it, we're out of the playoffs, and Bob's doing irrational things, and then that's why things went sideways with Bob. Like it was a lot of things. And I wasn't the only guy. Like he did that to a lot of guys. So that's kind of where that went. It was kind of a weird how it went from such a high and great that next season it just kind of felt like it was just we'll just be fine. We'll make the playoffs, but he didn't. He tried to force Sam Bennett into a role maybe, you shouldn't have, or actually Bennett played wing that year with Backlund and he actually did well. It was the next year where they tried to play him at center again. So it's just kind of lots of weird things going on. And that's what always happens really you're never gonna have the same team. So it's always gonna be different the next year.
Yeah. And if guys don't fill the roles that they're expected to fill and this and that,
exactly.
Like sometimes you have to be adaptable. On one hand, we say give guys roles because it's important. They like that. On the other hand, it's like, well, they have to be able to do it too.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. Cause if someone's filling a role that maybe you played before and they're not doing it, like, well, why aren't we? There's got to be competition within still. Like you can't just give a guy a role, that's his role, I'm leaving it all year. Like if a guy's on the first line, he's not playing well, like sit him. Like I thought that was a problem too my last few years. There's young guys would never get sat. It was like, well, and I'm fine. You scratch the veteran guy. Like I got sat a bunch my last few years. That's fine if I'm not playing well. But if so-and-so is not playing well, maybe sit him. That'll teach him. Trust me, I got sat early in my career. There's nothing that wakes you up more than being a healthy scratch.
Yeah, healthy scratch is never a good one.
Yeah. And the young guys here never really, like it took forever. Like I love Sam Bennett. I still talk to him. He's first line in Stanley Cup or second line center in the Stanley Cup final right now. I talk to him and Chucky all the time. But it would have benefited him so much if he was scratched here and there through his first few years, instead of just being given 18 minutes a night where he played. And that goes for a lot of those guys. Like I think it hurts them because if you're playing bad, like sometimes you need a reset and sometimes you need an ass kicking and wake up call, not just, we'll work through it together. Like it's almost like I get the other young guys and they're the ones you want to succeed, but it's professional sports. You also got to make sure they know that it's not okay to keep playing this way.
For you, because I know obviously the injuries, but as far as playing time, and you talked about Keenan, how it didn't go very well. But what was that, the last year where you're playing in terms of ice time, responsibility, role, that did you face the same sort of thing where you feel like I should be playing more? I'm okay if I'm sitting, or how did it end in a way for you?
Wow. I was a little bit different because I'd been diagnosed with a shoulder that I needed to have surgery on. And they were like, can you hold off on that for a while and keep playing? So you try to keep playing and you're no good anymore. And all of a sudden you're supposed to, I look back and I'm ashamed of my last few years because I know the type of player I'm supposed to play like, but because of injuries, you're trying to play differently. And it's almost embarrassing, right? Like I'm working on things like I'm going to rush the puck. Like who the F do I think I am? I've not done it for 12 years. And all of a sudden my last year in the NHL, I'm going to be but it was because of injuries. You're trying to adapt your game to compensate for the things that you couldn't do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I was on my way to a surgery and he just expedited the end.
Yeah. But I think as an older player, when you get scratched, if you as a player, if you played good or not, So as a older player, if you played well, and this happened to me a few times with Bob, I knew I played really well the night before and then I'd be scratched. And that's where I would get into it with them. But if you play bad and get scratched, okay, I need to be better. It's fine. We're young guys. They don't really always know if they play good or bad because all they look at is like, well, I got 2 assists or they're so focused on, and I was the same when I was young too. Like you're focused on different things where when you're older, you're like, you just want to win. You want to make sure. And you got to have the same rules throughout the lineup, through everybody. You can't, because if you cater to the young guys, the veteran guys who are running that locker room, like they're going to get upset and it's like you can't have that. And I just feel like that's just the way the NHL is. You see it with every team.
Well, it feels bloody obvious too, doesn't it? But then guys don't do it. And
exactly.
Like, how can you be missing this?
Yeah. Oh, then you call them out and then they get mad at you even more. And then you're out of the league.
Yeah. I remember you were talking about when Berkey comes to Calgary, you're like, well, honey, pack her stuff, because He traded me in the last place, and I'm sure he's going to do it again. What were you thinking when Bert comes here?
Exactly that, because it was the exact same situation where I was last year of my contract. I was playing in it. Bob was playing me in a checking role, so I was playing against their team's top lines because at that time, like we just mentioned the names of Getzlaff, like that's our division. They don't want to put Monahan against those guys. Let's let the older guy take the dashes, right? So I was like, we're gonna get traded, and then Berkey wanted to keep me. He honestly pulled me aside, to his credit. First day of camp, he brought me for a coffee, and he's like, I see you here to help the young kids along, and I'm not going to just trade you to trade you. He said, I know what kind of person you are. I think you're a great guy for the guys to learn from, and we're going to turn this around quickly. And I want you to be a part of it. And I went to that season that way. And in January, he's like, he obviously just wanted to make sure. And he kept me and traded Cammy and Stempy. So that's kind of, or didn't keep those guys. Yeah. And we're all buddies, but Berkey was very straight up with me. So
signed you.
And signed me. Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Pinder with your Betway bet of the day. Don't know if you caught much of Wimbledon, but it was an incredible performance from the young rising star of men's tennis, Alcaraz. Ousts Djokovic in the final. He's already a king on clay. Let's see how he does on hard court. The final major of the season is the U.S. Open from Flushing Meadows in Queens, New York. I love Alcaraz to win this tournament. I think it's clicked. He's the best on the planet. And thanks to everyone else for showing up. It's Carlos's tournament now. Alcaraz plus 150 to win the U.S. Open. That is my Betway bet of the day. Remember, 19 plus, Ontario only. Bet the responsible way. Betway.
There you have it. Part 2 of our sit down with Matt Stajan. And I love the honesty from Stage. He's so good in that way. It had to be tough, right? When you think about it as that player. Blockbuster deal. The league takes notice. Dion Phaneuf, wow, this is a monster trade. And in Toronto, they're very excited. And not so much to see you leave if you're Matt Stajan necessarily, but they're not broken up at all that you're leaving. And in Calgary, they're not exactly thrilled that you're what's coming back in this trade. So no question about it. That would have been a tough time for Matty Boy. Coming up in segment number 3, the 1,000-game plateau. It's in sight. You can see it. But will he be able to experience it and feel it and taste it as the ice time starts to go away and the responsibility dwindles as the coaching carousel continues in Calgary? So more adversity, and hockey really takes a back seat. A lot of things take a back seat as Matt and Katie are dealt a blow that it's a parent's worst nightmare, and it becomes a reality for the Stajans. Coming up tomorrow in part 3 of our sit-down long-form conversation style with Matt Stajan on Barn Burner. Hope you join us, would you? See ya.